I'm Jim Winship. I'm a retired social work professor. I've also got a background in storytelling, and that's oral storytelling once upon a time. And that led me to get involved with digital stories, helping people make 3-minute personal stories that have video or and photos and then narrated, and then and in many ways that led to the project we have now.
Hi, and I'm Parker Winship. As you may have guessed, I'm related to Jim. He is my father. I am a filmmaker, so I went to school for screenwriting out in Los Angeles, and when I was out there, I got really involved in other aspects of filmmaking, directing, producing. Then through that, got interested in other aspects of filmmaking. So for this project, I shot it, did the sound, did the editing, and whatever else I could do to help make this a reality.
Right, and I directed, and we co-produced the film.
Right.
Sure. So here's the origin story of the film. In late 2019, early 2020, I was talking with an organization, Hunger Task Force in Wisconsin, which is a loose association of food pantries and advocacy organizations, about doing some training for food pantry volunteers. And then the pandemic happened. And because I was on Natalie, the coordinator of that organization, her email list, I started listening in March to phone calls that were held weekly with food pantries around the state. And I realized after the second week, because everything had changed so much in a week, that there was a story there. And this comes out in the film a little bit, and I wanted to try to catch that story. My original idea was, that it might be an article in the Atlantic, although I didn't know if I could write that well. So I got five food pantry directors agreed to talk with me weekly, and for a year we talked every Thursday or Friday. I talked with all of those, then less frequently the second year. And then in July I got a little bit of money, and Parker had come home to Wisconsin during the pandemic.
Yeah, and that's July 2020, just to be clear.
This is on 2020, right? And so I asked him if he would go with me to just do a kind of a circle around the state and interview these directors. Wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but people gave me money to do it, just travel money. And so we did this, and we were driving back from Ashland. Okay, so Wisconsin's a state that's really tall. I mean, it's actually a 7-hour drive from Bayfield, which is up in Lake Superior, all the way down to where I live in Whitewater. So on the way down, we realized, after the footage we had gotten and the amazing people we had talked to, that we had a documentary. And so then we set out to try raise a little bit of money and to make it. As is often the case with documentaries, it took far longer than we thought it would. And it was a great journey.
And I think from my end, I had been living out in Los Angeles and had decided to come back to Wisconsin, where I'm from, for a little while, even before the pandemic. And then it ended up kind of coinciding with lockdown. And so I came back to the Midwest, and not surprisingly, was not doing a whole lot, because there wasn't a whole lot going on. And so when my dad started talking about this project and how he was talking about shooting some video, I said, I could shoot some of this video for you. I was staying at his house with him and my mom, and I was, we're already in a bubble and all that. And I was like, I can shoot some video. Maybe I'll shoot this. And so when I volunteered for that, I think I thought I was volunteering for like a week-long process. And it was, a little over 2 years is what it actually turned into. So, but it was great the whole time. Grew up in Wisconsin, and so many aspects of the story I had no idea were going on around us. So many people that I didn't know were doing this kind of work, or what the work consisted of, that we got to know over the process, and so many parts of the state that we got to see that I never would have seen otherwise.
I helped set up a food pantry decades earlier when we lived in Georgia. I've worked with homeless families. I've been on boards that serve that, and I've worked with students who were working in that area. So I knew the subject matter, and I think what you'll see in the film, because one thing that does, in order to provide context, that it goes back in time. I taught social welfare policy for social work students for a long time. So that was material that I was just very familiar with.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I don't have a social work background, so the kind of policy aspect or the interworkings of these kinds of hunger organizations, certainly, not something I was very familiar with. But the thing I was familiar with was being somebody trying to, support myself on inadequate wages. I got a master's degree in film, and not surprisingly, immediately after that, the income is not super high. I was learned a lot about having to stretch dollars and not applying for the kinds of benefits that I could have, because I just kind of didn't know a lot about it. And so realizing that this kind of work that these organizations do, the kind of nutritional benefits that are available to the public, are these are things that I could have used, and I am nowhere near the kind of most in need of these kinds of services, but I really could have used it. And so applying that experience, I think in some ways also helped with telling the story.
The other thing is the fact that Parker was outside that field. We would hear something and he'd say, "Wow, that's really amazing. I didn't know that," right? And because it was not new to me. And so we had that. And I think that really helped to tell the story to people for whom all of this is new. And the great majority of the population just really has very little idea of the life of people who go to food pantries. Well, obviously, we want as many people to see it as possible, and I think some of it is we've started showing it in the communities that was filmed. We did the first one of those a week ago up in northern Wisconsin. Well, so we're going to get the other three of the other ones during Housing and Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week in April, and then partly to show it to communities so people can have a discussion. When we were up in Ashland, they showed the film, and then there was a really nice half-hour discussion on food insecurity in that area, in terms of, because a lot of people in the audience, many of whom were people who had supported the food pantry, the brick, which shows up in there, but really didn't know very much, because if you're a supporter, you write a check, you bring some food in, but you really don't know that world. And then if we could get it to public television or other distribution channels, just so people can see it and react to it. So that's the goal is for as many people to see it as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the word that you used, Julian, demystification is, I think, a big part of what we want to do here, of just these are not, these are exceptional people that we're talking about, but these stories are not unusual. This is happening all over the country, all of the time. It was going on before the pandemic. It just intensified for a while under the pandemic, but this has been going on for a long time. And so kind of hopefully normalizing that discussion on what are the needs that are being served by organizations like these or by certain government policies, but also what are the areas that aren't being served, in particular by government policies and hoping that at the very least we can just raise an awareness of some of these things and promote a discussion about them.
Yeah, because one thing that comes out toward the end is that, that there was a while toward the end of 2021 in which the government was doing stuff that really worked. Fewer people were hungry, and so that idea that we can do that is something that that I think is important. And right now, because we're talking in 2022, some of those programs have been scaled back. Lots of people are coming to food pantries again. The inflation certainly is adding to that, and we don't have right now the strong policies that would help with that. So what I'm hoping to do, and I actually got a little filming for this project that would have been done this year, and then I had some health concerns and had to back up and give the money away. I'd really like to, I'm hoping to do a documentary also in Wisconsin, in one of those counties that was seen, the one where Marty Lee has the Wishara food pantry, called Growing Older in a Rural Wisconsin County. It's a county of 25,000, 25% of people over 65, income like 10,000 less than the state average. And I'd like to be able to to tell the story of seniors in that county, because I think, again, it's complicated in ways people don't understand. Medical resources can be farther away, and people are getting older, and there's health concerns, and people want to stay. I mean, this is their place. This is where they want to live, and also because as a social worker, strengths perspective has been really important to me, and I think that influenced the film. And we don't want it to be about just problems, right? We want to talk about what people are doing that works, how people are an asset, et cetera. So, like any documentary, if we can get the funding to do it, I would love to do it. And I have no idea what it would look like once we get a lot of film in the can, as they say. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I, depending on timing and stuff, I might be working on that as well, which would be really cool. And I've also got some of my own projects going right now. I have I wrote and directed a fiction short film that's out at some festivals at the moment, and working on a couple of other things, including something very different from what my dad was just talking about, which is a horror movie. So we'll see how that goes.